Justin, Steve, Andrea, welcome to the Game Informer Show, guys.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you. It's a whole group of Blizzard. We're lucky just to get one Blizzard employee on the podcast, but good Lord.
It is. It's a bevy of Blizzard.
One might say too much Blizzard.
So how would you guys describe yourselves like as a unit? What is the overall roles here? What's the overlap? What's the Venn diagram of your positions at Blizzard here?
Sure.
So I'm the senior casting and voice director. So these guys are very much my primary team members with getting VO recorded. So we work hand in hand to bring all our great characters to life.
Yeah, I'm a senior narrative designer on World of Warcraft.
And I'm the lead writer on Heroes of the Storm.
That's fantastic. All right, so you guys have a GDC presentation coming up soon. And Andrea, you were describing how this is kind of the third. This is the Legacy of the Void for your GDC presentations, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Right.
So what are you hoping to tackle this time around?
Well, quick overview. The last 2 years I gave 2 different talks at GDC because I realized that the game industry, everything's so top secret that we don't kind of share best practices. We don't kind of have our kumbaya moments and kind of hang out and chat and share what we've learned. And I realized that the VO pipeline can be overwhelming for a lot of people. So I wanted to kind of share all that we've kind of built and put together over the years with the community as a whole so we can do better and improve. Because nothing breaks my heart. We all know when those games come out and the VO falls flat. And we know firsthand how hard those game teams work to bring those games to life. And when it's not what they want and they miss the mark, I know it's heartbreaking for them. And for all of us in the industry, we always feel bad when a game doesn't achieve its full potential. So I just kind of wanted to share what I know with the game community and take it from there. First year was kind of all about the VO pipeline from the actor's perspective. Last year was a 2-day workshop, kind of talking to more small indie developers if they had to kind of cast and direct on their own, how to really roll your sleeves up in a kind of DIY approach to VO. But this year I'm really excited because I thought what they really need to know as well is recording VO from the writer, the game designer perspective. Because sometimes I think designers get recruited to record VO, they go to the recording studio and they're overwhelmed. There's an actor that's bigger than life, there's all this craziness going and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So these are 2 of my favorite people at Blizzard, so I thought what a great way to bring them and their stories and insights to GDC to share how they approach recording VO.
Yeah, what are some of the common things that you hear when you play other games where we don't have to be specific, but are there just common things that drive you insane? Like clearly they're doing this very obvious thing incorrectly in the booth. Is it just what are the common mistakes along the way?
I think that, well, you guys can speak to this as well, but one thing, which is why I'm glad they're here, is I was teaching my 2-day workshop last year, and somebody, I won't say the game, said we made this game, and the actor was terrible. It wasn't what we wanted at all. And I said, okay, well, who was at the session? Who was with you? And they said it was just the actor and the director. Well, then who's from the game team to say the context and to tell what happened? And I think there's a tendency to ignore VO. They work on the programming, the artwork, the story, and then just go get the VO done.
Right.
And then they wonder why it's not happening because they're not committing to having somebody there. What do you guys think?
There's a definite craft to getting good VO, and a good amount of it is being there to provide the context. It is very easy to see a bunch of words on a page and not know where they go.
Yeah.
Despite your best efforts, everything is just someone screaming something into the void. And so just having someone to go, hey, this is on the battlefield. That's said to someone who's really close to you. You don't have to scream it at them. Little simple things like that help relate it to the actor, and you immediately get a much better performance. You're talking about guys who don't have the opportunities that, say, you get on TV or in the theater where they can rehearse over and over and they have that time with a director. Instead, they have to sort of just jump in, be an elf or whatever, and go for it. And it's a hard job. And so anything we can bring as game developers helps make that a lot easier.
Yeah, I think the cornerstone of our talk is really about how there's this kind of golden triangle of VO recording where one prong is the actor, one is the director, and one is someone from the game team. And you need all 3 of those elements really to convey what is needed and to get the best performance out of it. Because, like as Justin said, it's all about context.
Right.
And we're not just in it for a great performance. We're in it for a great performance that fits the game, the needs of the game, and that's what he and I especially focus on in the sessions.
I think one thing that we talked about for this talk, and maybe you could talk about it, Steve or Justin, is kind of when the game designer joins, they bring the small, medium, and large perspective, right? So the large perspective being what's going on in the overall game. Medium perspective is maybe the race and what's happening. and the micro is what's happening with that character at that moment. So
yeah, when you know, we build these big worlds at Blizzard, and obviously a game like World of Warcraft has years and years of content to it, and so we look at it as this kind of onion of storytelling, or this multi-layered storytelling. So there's a big world picture, there's smaller chunks of that world and things that are going on, kind of zone-wide arcs, continent-wide arcs, and you keep getting down to what are the races, what's the story of the races in there, and then down to the individual character level. And we kind of need to know all of those levels so that when we're dealing with an actor who's conveying a performance for one particular, you know, person within this whole sphere, their performance and the things they're saying need to resonate through all those layers, and they need to be true to all those layers. So it's having a lot in your head, a lot of story beats in your head, but making sure again that context is reinforcing everything that they say, and that it feeds all those levels of storytelling.
Yeah, Andrea, I mean, how specific do you get in the direction? Are there those moments, and I don't know if it would help an actor to know this or not, to say like, by the way, this is going to be one of those lines that the players are going to hear over and over and over again, so please nail it.
Look at you, or yeah, please nail it. Please don't screw it up. I don't say please nail it because I hope they do, but that you've got great intuition, because we say that all the time. We're cognizant, especially for our player characters. You know, the lines are going to hear a lot. I cannot carry that. I need two hands for that weapon. We can't make those too big and bold because they're going to play in repetition. Yeah. So we're very cognizant of the PC lines versus the big epic storylines. There's such a different tone for both of those approaches.
Yeah. I'll say even on Heroes of the Storm, one of the things we have to approach quite a bit is getting nostalgic lines across. So we get characters from Warcraft 3, from Overwatch, all over across the board. And when you play those characters, you want them to be like you remember them, right? So there's all sorts of lines that are just sacrosanct. It's like, this read needs to be as close as possible to this particular thing. So we hit that nostalgia beat as hard as we can.
And so the actor will just
all the time.
So the actor will just listen to like, jacked up and good to go, jacked up and good to go, jacked up and good to go, and then try and nail it.
Yeah, you can't have someone sipping a cup of tea and saying, for the horde, darling. You know, it has to be gusto. It has to be, they have to mean it.
That would be amazing.
It would be amazing. Now we're going to record that because we talked about it, but you know what I mean.
What have you done?
With Heroes of the Storm in particular, it's really fascinating to me just how, do you feel like you have more freedom to be sillier with that game and the lines you can get away with in that? Is that like peak silly Blizzard in your mind?
A little bit. So the key for us was we made an early call that we wanted to make the game feel a lot more like Warcraft 3 than, say, even StarCraft. You find different flavors of the game, and Warcraft 3 has some pretty good silly in there if you're clicking through the piss lines and stuff. And since the game felt like playing that game with the heroes and such, we wanted to make it feel like it came from that line. Right. So in the case of Heroes, actually, there's sort of two modes. When you're playing the game, I expect you to almost get lost in the fantasy of the character. So, for example, a villain like Diablo, I want to try to make him feel as dark and evil as possible for most of that character. And then when you get into the piss lines, all bets are off. It's just like, okay, we've entered Joke Town. It's cool. Everyone knows this isn't silly. You shouldn't be clicking your character on the battlefield anyways, people. But in general, it's like there's a space here for that. And then most of the rest, I want you to get lost in the feeling.
Yeah. You know? I love Heroes because Tyrael, for example, from Diablo 3, so epic and serious. But like in Heroes, he's talking about discovering bodily functions. It's kind of like it's like them when they're not at work, right? It's like them in the off hours at the bar. So Heroes is really fun. Even the actors come in and say, "Oh my God, it's great because I don't have to be all epic and serious and saving the world. I could just kind of dick around and be ridiculous."
I think my favorite Sammy quote, Sam Didier, he's a art director here, and he's been playing orcs forever at Blizzard doing the VO, and he came out of a session, he's like, I got to say dude as an orc. It was the greatest thing on earth. So yeah, we find our moments.
Do you guys ever just I'm curious, like, do you think, this is so dorky, but are there discussions in the halls of Blizzard, it probably happened years and years ago, of like, is Heroes of the Storm canon? Is this one galaxy, one universe? Do you have an official Blizzard line for the reality of Heroes of the Storm?
So we do, and I'm not going to share it with you.
Interesting. But at some point, are there like, is it a debate-filled?
At some point, it may get revealed exactly. We're still working all that stuff out, but we did have to have discussions with quite a few people to figure out where it goes, how it works. It is you're not alone. The very first thing people reacted to was sort of this like, what's going on in this game? We're like, okay, let's all talk. We'll figure it out.
Right.
We have answers.
Okay, it's not like a Smash Brothers type thing where there's secretly toys all along or anything like that.
It is not that. No.
Okay, all right. It's a good angle if you just want to take it. So you mentioned pissed lines.
If it becomes that, you don't get credit officially. By the way.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
So you
okay,
mentioned
cool.
pissed lines, and it's one of those things where like, is he saying pissed? That's the part that I'm really curious about. Is like what terminology you guys have within Blizzard for these different types of lines? Because I mean, going back to the earliest days of Blizzard, those character moments are so important, and I call them barks. What are the official terminology for what those lines are?
So everyone's going to have different terms. The real truth is either they come from previous establishments, from teams prior to you, like, for example, Pissed. That one in general was, I believe it came from the fact that when, might even go past StarCraft, I'm not really sure, but internally we had two states. There's the what state, where they're like, what do you want? What do you need? Huh? What's going on? And then it's like Pissed was when they hit that line of just like, stop poking me! You know, it's like that. From there on, it gets a little silly and weird.
Right.
So in general, we've actually had that term for quite a while. But barks, for example, often has other things like
What's a bark? I never heard of
combat
bark.
is usually the way I hear that term. So that would be like dudes screaming stuff on a battlefield, like fire mission, and just like things like that. Grenade. Those are usually referred to as barks. But everyone's got their own.
In WoW, we got aggro kill.
Yeah, in WoW, so for example, we just on our most recent patch, we introduced allied races, so it was some new playable race options for World of Warcraft. And so we go into those sessions with kind of this, a really deep script, because our player characters have to say a lot of things. And so I kind of broke the big script down into different sections. So there were like a social section where it's just people talking, and some of the things they say are silly, but it's also the thank yous and the hellos and the goodbyes. And we have joke lines that fit under that, and then we have the silly or pissed lines that also fit under there. And then there's a section of like combat exertions, and there's the orders that you give on the battlefield and all those things. And we break them up that way so that when we're recording with an actor, we can kind of ease them into the character, give them some lines where performance matters more at the beginning, and then save the real exertions, the heavy stuff, for the end, because we're really mindful of taking care of their voices and making sure they're not damaging themselves.
And that's a big thing about the talk the theme of that was the last 2 years and this year, is I don't think people realize that what voice actors do and how much they really blow out their voices and what they give. I mean, I think voice recording is a full body contact sport, because they scream, they yell, they sweat. It's really physically taxing. Totally. So it's really knowing how to work with actors and treat them and communicate with them and schedule your session so that you don't destroy them, because with our big long sessions, they can leave pretty beaten up, I'm not going to lie. And we're trying to do better with that. So.
You just have an endless supply of tea in the booth? Is that the easy way to go?
Yeah, no, we
pretty
do.
much,
we actually have, I'm very proud of myself. I coined the Orc Throat Kit, which is now becoming an industry standard.
Nice.
It's called the Orc Throat Kit, which is what we have, which is every lozenge, salve, syrup, tea, a whole kit of everything I've collected over the years to take care of them. Yeah. Because they will destroy themselves. I mean,
honestly, anything we can do to protect the voice from like the way we format sessions, the way we approach things, we try our best to not set them up for success as much as possible. Is the real truth.
So I think one last thing in that note, the key for what we're going to talk about for all these 3 sessions, especially this GDC, is collaborating with your talent. They're not an asset. It's not a sweatshop. They're your partner in this. Because we can do all of our work ahead of time, all of our pre-production. The actor walks in the booth, and when they bring themselves to it, that's when the magic happens. So we're going to talk a lot about, we can do all our pre-prod, but let the actor come in and breathe. And when you let the actor own that character, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a moment of discovery, because like you say, we've got this image of what the character is in our heads when we go in, but if you give yourself over to the process and let the actor do their thing, let the director do their thing, then you discover new layers to that character, and you get performances that you weren't expecting, but that fit in ways that are just glorious.
Yeah. What's been the most fun project to work on for you, Andrea? Do you have a favorite franchise within Blizzard that every time?
One of us is leaving mad.
Yeah, boy.
I would suggest picking one that isn't in the room.
I
That's the
know.
safe
I love them all equally. I'm not going to lie. I love them all. But I really love Hearthstone, because sometimes with our bigger games with this lore, it's those heavy lore and heavy storytelling. I love it. But Hearthstone's kind of what I call my punk rock indie game that I get to work on. And it's like this crazy game of improv, because all actors come in and do 5 different characters, and we just have artwork. They show up, I'm like, go, you're a talking spoon. What does that sound like? Right? We did the cutlery a couple patches ago. But we just show artwork, and the actor it's like, whose line is it anyway? They see the artwork, they go, oh, this is what it would sound like. And there's no heavy lore or anything we have to follow. It's ridiculous, over the top play. And we even say you can't go too big or too funny because give us all you got. So Hearthstone's really fun because I feel like we're very free in a very unique way.
Yeah. Yeah, not to make you choose your least favorite, but I'm going to throw out there, I'd imagine one of the most challenging ones is Protoss specifically in StarCraft. Like, how do you not make them sound dorky? And especially when they're trying to convey, like, gameplay, that must be so hard.
They have no mouth, so there's that. So,
dude, Protoss is an art. It's the answer is you rewrite that line 40 times until you can say it over and over and go, okay, I think this is roughly there. And then by the time we get to the actor, usually they're really good at making things sound natural. So, like, if you can get most of it there, they'll usually take it the rest of the way. And then you're like, oh, that sounded amazing. And the voice filters on it. No, it's great.
What have you learned along the way? Do you have, like, certain pillars of, like, all right, the Protoss are this, but they're not this when it comes to writing and then performing the lines?
Yeah, I mean, usually we'll do that a lot of times starting at the character. I think pretty much almost every discipline at Blizzard has things like that, little pillars that sort of help guide the shape of something. So, for example, from the writing side, a quick example would be like you have the Templar, the Nerazim, and the Tal'Darim, the three sort of different samey but different colored factions of Protoss, essentially. But when we were developing them, we had to like kind of find the touchstones individually for each one of those so we can make them all feel unique from each other, give them different perspectives, and then actually everyone hits it from a different angle. So color, shape, the way they're written. So for example, the Templar, are very honorable. They're very, they're very regal. Whereas we wanted the Tal'Darim to feel much more brutal, direct, and human, actually. So in many ways, we would even go like, well, the Templar are kind of Athenian, and the Tal'Darim are Spartan, essentially. Right. So you can kind of see like these guys are in their heads, these guys stab people in the dark. And so when you take those, you get the art as well. We'd even do the editing, honestly. The Protoss don't breathe like the Templar. We pull out all the breaths because they're speaking to you psychically.
Interesting.
Which is really cool, right? But we don't do that to the Tal'Darim. The Tal'Darim keep their breaths because it gives them a very alien feel for a Protoss. Suddenly you're like, what is this thing doing? Why is it different than every other Protoss? And it gave them a new, unique shape. Yeah. You know?
And I think in WoW we have to do that too because there's so many demons. For God's sake.
Oh yeah.
How many demons can a game? How many orcs?
We'll make more. Is the answer.
But it's hard because we have to figure out because we always worry about like orc fatigue, right? Because there's so many, but we have to figure out, especially for warlords, the clans. Who are they? Their sound. I mean. That's been tough.
Yeah, that was a big challenge in Warlords of Draenor, and we had the demon thing and Legion, obviously, and that's been a huge expansion for us. But there were so many different casts of demons, and how are pit lords different from doom lords and all this kind of stuff. But it's a really fun challenge to have that many layers of story again, and that's part of my job is to try and find that consistency and continuity for those things to make sure, because we have a big team of designers and people writing quests and people writing all this lore and stuff, and it needs to kind of funnel through and make sure that everything fits together, that it serves again that bigger story, and that all those characters fit within this bigger quilt of goodness that is the Blizzard story.
Quilt of goodness. You heard it here first.
That's the part I'm trying to figure out. Is that pipeline? Like, do you guys just have a suggestion box in the kitchen for unit lines?
That'd be great.
Like, how do you funnel everything down to like, okay, we only are going to record these 14 lines and go?
Well, honestly, that's pretty much just our jobs essentially, but like actually we do have at least on my side we do have open suggestion lines. We have full feedback threads and different groups and all sorts of email stuff. In fact, I also just have anyone come up to me and be like, I had this hilarious idea, can we talk about blank? I love team feedback. I try to incorporate it as much as possible, while still trying to keep true to the character, right? Like, there's only so much you can do. A lot of times someone will have a hilarious joke that you just can't make work because it's a skeleton man or something. But in general, like, I love team feedback. We try to collect it and do everything we can. But it's going to win. The character's going to win is the truth. Like, when you have to look, you have 300, whatever the number of lines. And in general, whatever you can place would be great, but it doesn't always work.
Yeah, on the World of Warcraft team, we have like I said, it's a lot of designers, a lot of quest people, and we all kind of sit in these big rooms and we just vibe off one another. And so we talk about our ideas and our stories, and we, it really is this big iteration process where the story starts with some kernel from someone, but it kind of gets talked about and passed around, and the good ideas always kind of rise to the top, and the bad ones either change, adapt, or they go away. And that's just kind of that iteration process. And we play each other's stuff, we get feedback on each other's stuff. That's super important to kind of narrowing down to those key story elements that we really want to make sure are getting across to the player.
Yeah, I'd also jump in and say, like, it also changes based on the project, right? So, for example, like, Heroes of the Storm, a lot of the things they're doing is, like, can we make Thrall the most thrally Thrall that's ever thralled, right? But on the other side, say something like WoW or even StarCraft, it's much more open, right? Like, you have a huge campaign in front of you, and so you try to figure out the things that are important to the team, that are important to the writing staff. It's that thing I've always said is that, like, the writer doesn't necessarily write the story. They help guide the story with their experience and all the knowledge we have from all the training and years of doing this we have. But in general, it's the team's story. It's the people around you. Like, we all build this thing together. So it is very important to get what everyone kind of wants to do and where they want to go. And you sort of plot and see how you can make it work and where you can take it.
And I think lastly too, we let the actors play in the booth as well.
Totally.
They'll ad lib, and those are also moments where, because they're so on the front lines, we can talk about this till the cows come home, but the actors are on the front line, and when they just ad lib and add stuff and add their flavor, I mean, it's just really great.
Yeah, we definitely want to keep open enough that should something awesome come up in the session, we can change the script, we can change the in-game lines to incorporate that. And again, we make sure that it fits with the bigger picture, but there's those cool opportunities for, like, wow, that's a neat little nugget to kind of drop in there. We're totally changing that line to that thing.
Oh, I'd say sometimes it even shapes a character. So for example, like Abathur and Alarak, two very interesting characters that we had in StarCraft. Both of them, we sort of knew what we were doing as we went in the booth. We were like, this makes sense. It got into Steve Bloom or John Delancey's hands, and boy, did we immediately go, oh no, that's the thing. And we went back and like tweak lines across the board because now we're able to hear the character in our heads much clearer. And suddenly that boosts and changes and shapes, and you go, oh great, now I know exactly how Abathur talks. But prior to that, it was sort of like a 90% guess.
And that's one thing we're going to talk about at the panel for game teams is, if you go in thinking it has to be this, I want this, then you're going to lose the magic. So like we're saying, we all go in, suddenly the actor does something different. We're like, oh, it's amazing.
Like a guiding light.
So I think, the bottom, it's like it takes a village, man, doesn't it? Totally takes a village.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing just going on Reddit a fair amount. Like, there's so many of those posts where it's, hey, two actors from Overwatch ran into each other in the street, and now they just film a quick video and fans go wild. I mean, is that just nice just to feel the energy with the community when the actors, just them talking to each other is enough for fans to go crazy?
It's like I don't even have words for what's happening with that. It's just gone bananas, and it's wonderful. I especially think in these crazy dark times, right, to have a game that's full of, yes, it's a first-person shooter, but it's still full of positivity, and I love that Overwatch is in its own weird way making the world a better place, and that's a really unique thing, and it's been magical to watch. So
it's a hopeful world.
It's a hopeful world.
We like to have those moments of charm and beauty, no matter how many demons are rushing at you trying to destroy you.
Exactly. What I really like is all the Overwatch actors are taking their job very seriously. They're not just, fame is one thing, but they are really trying to make the world a better place, even in their own individual lives. So it's really this magical thing to watch game merging with real life and all this stuff in between. So.
Well, we're probably biased, but one of the most fun things I think is at BlizzCon is seeing when the actors come out, they do panels, they interact with the fans, and they totally feed off the energy of our fans there. And fans love hearing, say the thing, say the thing, say the thing. And then, you mentioned payload, and everyone, Sylvanas yells, for the Horde! It's just crazy. And,
I love it when you do that.
Oh, that energy, there's just nothing like that. And seeing the whole room of people just light up because it feeds the actors as well. And that's really fun for them.
And also on the World of Warcraft panel, our actress who plays Illyria was talking about how she fights depression. Suddenly it was a weep fest. The whole audience was crying because they're like me too. So she made it okay to be human. I mean, that was a whole other thing.
We did like a signing afterwards, and I was sitting near her, and there were so many people coming up and saying, "Oh, I'm so grateful you had the courage to say that, because I feel those same things, and I have those same. I've been fighting that same kind of."
It was
thing.
real.
And,
I mean,
it was very touching, and it just shows you how much these performances really do reach fans' hearts, and that's something we take very seriously.
For sure. Like, it was wild. I went back and listened not too long ago to like the first conversation we ever had about Overwatch on the Game Informer Show podcast. And it was amazing that out of the gate, the first thing we're talking about is the character lines and the personalities coming through so clearly. Is there any lesson overall that you guys have taken from Overwatch, Andrea, with your work on it, or from the other teams in Blizzard, about a somewhat of a less is more approach? I understand there's a lot of lore in Overwatch. I understand you guys probably have a room filled with paperwork of lore Overwatch. When it first came out, it was still all nebulous, and it was just the charm of those characters. This is maybe putting words in your mouth, but was there a feeling maybe of like, oh, if we just lead with characters, that's going to draw people into the lore more than any sort of lore dump we could ever do?
I don't think we really knew. I remember before Metzen at BlizzCon, before we were going to do the reveal, we're like, we didn't even know if this is going to work. We didn't know if anybody's going to like it. So we were just kind of shooting from the hip. The team could speak to this more than I can, but I don't know if there was that great big plan. We were just doing something we loved, and we're going to launch it and see where it goes. But I can tell you what Overwatch has taught me is, I think the key to our characters is that I'm not looking for the voices. I'm looking for actual people who have the same energies as our character. If you think about Reinhardt and Darren DePaul, most of the cast on Overwatch, they are playing a character, but that's a character based on them. So I think that, for me, from the voiceover perspective, really highlights casting is not just looking for that voice, but looking for the human to best embody what you're doing. And Overwatch really celebrates that. I mean, every single Lucio, Johnny Cruz is Lucio in real life. So it's really fun to really laser focus my perspective on when I'm casting, looking for people, not just a voice. Yeah. So I think that's part of our success.
I'd say, to answer from a little bit from our side as well, like most of the stuff I've worked on is still from a pre-Overwatch world, if that makes sense. I worked on StarCraft 2 and a little bit of Diablo 3 and all of Heroes of the Storm. But all that stuff came from prior to Overwatch's take. So it's an interesting thing. We're all watching really closely to see how things go, how things are received. I would say in general, it's interesting because we're all going to approach things in different ways, but I would argue character is extremely important to every single team.
Absolutely.
It's how much story, how it gets conveyed. I think that's going to be different for everybody, right? Like, Overwatch is a first-person team-based shooter. Will that work for a product like an MMO? Maybe not. Maybe. I think in general, we're all looking at things, playing with stuff, seeing how it works. But yeah, it's in the brain. I just don't know where it'll go because I don't know every approach works for everything. You know what I mean? So we're all special.
Snowflakes.
It's Blizzard.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Bad joke.
We'll cut out that bad joke. That's just fine.
You'll edit that out. It's fine.
Andrea, we were just talking about Overwatch lines in the office not that long ago, and I just asked, like, hey, Leo in the booth, I was like, what's your favorite line in all of Overwatch? And he's like, oh, come get your armor. And so if we had to, like, focus in on one line, why not that one? Do you remember recording that one in the booth?
Oh my God, it's a blur. Heck, absolutely. Think about this. These guys are lucky they get to work on one title. I cast and record every single character on every single game.
Oh my God.
So in my head, I can't tell you what I ate for dinner last night. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm extremely schizophrenic because every Blizzard character lives in my head.
Yeah.
I got no idea.
It explains a lot once you know her. But like with World of Warcraft, there's a sea of memes that come out all the time. If we tried to predict them or like, here's a great line that's going to make it awesome, it wouldn't work at all. And so there's all kinds, years and years of people just pulling out these in the mountains, just these little lines that we just record in the moment, but something about them resonates with people, and they latch onto that and put it on T-shirts and make videos and put a dubstep mix behind it. It's all these things. It's awesome.
Right. I think very, very occasionally you get one in the booth where you're just like, that's it. That's a thing. Oh my goodness, everyone's going to glom onto that. But occasionally you'll be sitting there and just be like, okay, I think this all works. And then immediately someone like, a year later, will make a crazy thing you never expected. Now it's a song. It's really difficult to predict, but in general, we kind of just focus down every line and making sure it's as good as possible. You never really can tell.
How's the archive process at Blizzard? Do you guys have like the raw tapes from Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2, StarCraft?
I'm going to be honest. I don't know the answer to that question.
I don't know the answer either. Yes, we do. I'm sure there's a
yeah,
vault.
we have everything. It's all on, literally on tape.
Yeah.
Like,
Realistically, though, like
tape.
if you just have those raw recordings from even Overwatch alone, and you released a CD where it's just like, you know, you can maybe edit it a little bit, but like the alternate takes, the outtakes along the recording session,
God.
you guys would make more money than Hearthstone.
The amount of outtakes. We always threaten. I always beg. I'm like, can't we, when the game's over, like the credits can roll and you just have like all the outtakes playing? Because we have some of the things that come out of people's mouths during session should never be heard by human ears.
It turns out that's hard. We tried that one year.
Did it work?
Yeah, it doesn't. You have to make a whole thing.
Maybe
it's not.
Maybe
You
like
just
it to
play
be in the
audio.
moment. Maybe it's not so funny
it
when
is.
you're not
It
in
is
the
in the
moment.
moment. Yeah.
I like you guys are working at Blizzard. You're like, that seems hard. Stitching together audio. I don't know.
The truth is, everything's hard, but
Everything's
in general,
hard.
it's that piece of like to get it to our standards, the amount that we have to put through it. In general, we were like, let's give this a shot, and immediately we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna end up spending months and months on this little silly joke. Is this worth it, everybody?
Yes.
Here we go. Okay, cool. Yes is the answer.
Steve, I'm curious. You mentioned, you know, some things along the process, along the way, and whatnot. But what was your last big like F yeah moment? What was the last moment that really, on the writing front, on the recording front, that you just got so excited about with Warcraft?
It's tough because I can't talk about the stuff we're currently recording, which is for our next expansion. But there are like we just had a moment the other day where there were two relatively minor characters, but there was something in the actor's performance where we just were like, this is the thing. This is what makes these characters come to life, and now we just like knew that like that was going to endear them to people. But like I can talk about something that happened in Legion. So one of our major characters in the whole kind of arc of Legion was the prophet Velen.
Yes.
And Velen, who's this Draenei, his people have been hunted for thousands and thousands of years by the Burning Legion. It's been like his arch rivals, these other guys he ruled alongside. They basically corrupted his son, turned his son against him, destroyed his whole planet, made it this battery for evil and all this stuff. And so Velen's had this long journey to try and return, and he finally returns to his world. And there's this little moment, it came up in the session that we were doing, where our great actor for Velen, David Shaughnessy, he's really into this character, and we were talking about this scene and this battle that's happening. It's on the deck of Kil'jaeden, his arch rival's starship, and there's all these demons around, and Velen goes and confronts him, and Kil'jaeden says this line about, did your son, please call your name when all this stuff was happening. And there was just a line that was Velen kind of crying out, just this scream. There's no words in it, no words at all. But we were talking about, and we spent several minutes just talking about the setup for this, and again, the history of the character and all that stuff. And David was like, okay, give me a second. And we're all just quiet for a while. And the take was rolling, and he just gave this utterance, and it was from his gut. It was from his soul. Yep. And I heard it, and I was like, oh my God, like I can't even believe that's like he just summoned it. It was like pulling it up from the center of the earth, from the center of his soul, and it just came through, and like I had tears in my eyes because I felt all that stuff all those years, and he conveyed in that one scream of agony and hurt and rage, like all the things that had happened to that character, and that was a moment that I'll never forget.
I know. Well, that's what actors bring. I mean, I think it's so interesting in the booth, because actors can read a million lines, but those lines that are true and honest, and you hear human emotion, all the hairs on your arms stand up. As humans, we are connected on such a visceral level, and when truth comes through a line, you feel it. You physically feel it. So that's what we're always chasing. But I love that Steve just did that, because you see that joy and enthusiasm he just did? Yeah. That's what we do in session, and that we start every session with what he just did, and just what Steve and all his greatness, all that passion and love comes through, and that just feeds the actors. So that was a great example of Steve's majesty.
I also love how amazing that answer is. In my head, I was like, I got to record Diva fangirling over Kerrigan. like that's like the polar opposite. So,
but it's a great example of if it were just a director with the actor and they got a script that was, Velen screams.
Yeah.
Who knows what you would have gotten? He might have done, well, maybe he's in pain, so I'll do a pain scream. Or maybe he's angry, and I'll just do an... But it had to combine all these layers. And if the actor didn't hear those things and let all that story and that characterization resonate with them, then that wouldn't have come through, and it would have just been a throwaway kind of
Such a good point.
Yeah.
Such a good point.
Andrea, spending so much time in the booth, working so much with actors, I mean, day after day, it'd be tough to maintain that enthusiasm that Steve just showed. Do you ever have those days where it's like, maybe I drank too much coffee or too little coffee, but I'm just gonna have to fake being very excited for the sake of this actor because we need to get these Lucio lines down.
These guys know how I roll. Like I can bring it like nobody. I can really. Let me two answers.
Not your usual. Go on.
I have a mantra which I will not say.
Please do, please.
Adult themed, no. A lot of. Well, no, I'm not going to say it. Anyway,
we can bleep it. We can bleep it.
On one hand, it is very hard. I think that anybody who's involved in recording sessions. Steve said something last week when we were practicing for GDC. He said if you don't leave a day of voice recording totally flippin' drained, then you're not doing it right, because we are all firing on all thrusters. We are emotionally invested in our characters. So if you're not drained, so myself as a director, I've got to be at 11 all the time because I have to be here all the time. And it is so draining, but I love it. The thing is, it's contagious when you get in. I mean, how often as adults do we get to be in a sandbox and play? Yeah. Right? You got the shovel, I got the bucket, you got the water, let's go. So that is a very fun thing. As a director, it's immensely draining. And especially when you have actors that it's taking more work, and I have to, the number one job of a director is to protect the talent. So no matter what's happening, I have to make them feel safe and secure. So that means I have to be not at 11, I've got to be at 111 all the time. And it makes these guys crazy because I'm always smiles, everyone. But it really is a necessary thing to kind of, I think the director's number one goal is to protect the talent and set the stage and make sure these guys are feeling good, the actor's feeling good, the engineer's good. So I have to take care of the whole room the whole day.
Yeah, and to jump in as a writer, I'd say on our side, we're also actively listening the entire time, right? You're hearing everything, you're processing and going like, how will that work at this moment in the game? And sort of checking everything all day for a huge chunk, like what, 8 hours some of these days, longer. So by the end, there's really not a moment that, unless you're like, if you're sitting on your phone, you're doing it wrong.
That's absolutely
And in general, like if you're completely engaged, by the time you're done, you're just like, I can't listen to anything anymore. I can't process. I've spent every bit of my energy. But in truth, like there's also just an incredible adrenaline to going to a session. There's something about like you think you have your best plans laid out before you. You think you know what you're doing. You think you've got to go in there. You give it to an actor and you let go. Yeah. And suddenly they get to take everything, chew it up, put it through their perspective, and spit it out in a whole new way that you've never seen before. You may not even been able to. You may not have been able to guess at all what would come out from that actor. Right. And in general, it's completely euphoric. It's this moment of just seeing like your child come to life in some ways. Yeah. It's amazing. And it's an experience that like very few people get to have in that kind of way. And like I love every session I go to. It is a super amazing thing, and like you are exhausted, but it's like you've done something super cool, and you feel like you're like, oh, I made something today. This is awesome.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons, I give that kind of story overview at the beginning, giving them this big picture, and even if they can't see me, I'm gesturing and I'm doing all this stuff and trying, but what I'm trying to do is yes, give them the context, give them all this like story beats and stuff. But what I really want to do is I want to make whatever character they're doing, if it's Orc Guard 03, I want them to feel like that's the most interesting character in the world.
I'm the best Orc Guard.
And there's all this stuff that's around it that they can pull from and draw from and infuse into that character. And so that excitement is contagious. And that's why Andrea's smiling at them and encouraging them. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. What if we bring this in and we do this stuff? And like, and again, picture the city and picture what the Horde is about. Like, picture what the Alliance is fighting for. Like all those kinds of things. Hopefully that triggers something within that actor to go, you know what, I'm going to give extra. I really care about this. They care about it, so I'm going to care about it, and my performance will reflect that.
And you can feel it. You can feel it in the game.
I love that. Oh, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, we don't take any line, even Background Villager 03. Every single line of every single character is given the same exact love, no matter what. Yeah. Because we really want to get it right, or else Red Shirt Guy is going to come after us. I said it with love because I love Ian.
I was going to say, you know him.
No, he's one of my good friends, so I can say that.
Naturally. But I just love the idea of exerting so much energy and positivity, and then in your heads, I'd imagine you're thinking Excel spreadsheets. All right, we got that line. We need this one. We can stitch this one together with that one. Do you have to keep that technical aspect in your mind, Andrea, specifically?
I don't. Actually, I'm in it. When I'm directing, I'm in it to win it. All that And you know, as a director, my goal is to not think about those, because I've got to be right in the moment with the actor.
Yeah.
The actor and I are connected. We're both in that scene together. I'm not thinking anything but performance.
Yeah.
These
We're
guys,
the spreadsheet.
Yeah, they're the
people.
spreadsheet guys.
Okay, gotcha.
And we totally do that. We have there's an engineer in the session too that we should totally be mentioning. There's an engineer sitting there keeping track of all those takes, so that we can we can go through several takes on a line. We can say, oh, play take A and C, and then we'll hear those things. Well, let's take the back of C and the top of A and put that together, and then listen to that. And so it really is that collaborative process of trying to find the best bits of all this stuff we're doing, all these crazy lines that people are saying, and really pulling those best performances together.
I think, Justin, you had a great analogy. You were saying that the great thing of having a designer and a director there is the designer doesn't have to worry about, I'm getting the performance, and you can think about how it's going to work in game.
Absolutely. So, like, the thing I love to think of is that the actor is focused entirely on the character, right? They're focused entirely on what the character is going to do, where it's going to go, how they would react to various stimuli. The director is entirely focusing on the performance, right? Like, listening to what the actor's doing, where it's going, how to make it the best as possible, the feeling, the emotion, getting everything right, and then the writer is focused directly on where it's going into the game, how it's going into the grand picture of the entire thing, right? So there's this, like, does this line serve pushing the orcs or the Protoss forward? Is this a battle line? Did that work correctly? All those things are going in there, and in general, I personally try to let the director and the actor nail and figure out the performance angle, whereas what I'm doing is going, okay, that was shouted in the middle of hell or whatever, and so it's like, will that work for that scenario? Does that work here? And usually it does. Occasionally I'll get a thing where it's like, I'm sorry, that was an amazing performance, but it was way too quiet. Can we get like 20% more volume? And then she'll take that, filter it back, and give it to the actor in a way that they can approach. And then so it's sort of this, like, cool, I give my feedback to the director makes it actor feedback, and sort of this process, they work together. It's pretty cool.
I'm like a universal translator. That's
exactly. So the game developer translator.
No, really. It's like you're like, oh, remember when Yoda did this and the Return of the Jedi? Oh my God. I take the nerd speak and I put it in the actor speak. I say that with love, but because I'm
a little betrayed. I'm not gonna lie.
Because I'm a nerd, I get what they're saying, right? I know every single nerd reference they give me. I know exactly what they mean. But I will say it's hard because a lot of these small game companies don't have directors, and you know, our talk is going to be about why, and I think probably you yourself right now have figured out why each element is so important. And some game companies just haven't been able to realize that yet. So.
Yeah, I mean, they may not have writers. It can be any part of the process might be different. And in general, you just sort of have to figure out how you can spread out that workload then if you don't have the same people.
By conveying our experiences and the lessons we've learned over the years of doing this, we want to give those smaller teams the same ability to go, well, I don't have all those resources, but here's how I can get close to that with what I do have and get the best out of it so that I'm happy with the lines that I get back.
And please keep your ego in check and don't think that game designers are going to be great VO artists as well. Don't be compelled to go in the booth on your own. It never works out well. Except for the case of like Bastion, I guess. That's probably a case where it worked out.
Yeah, that works pretty well.
Yeah, it sometimes works okay. Justin, I'm curious, you're working so much with the history of Blizzard, working on Heroes of the Storm. Do you have a favorite favorite character line throughout Blizzard history?
Man, that's a tough one. Man, now I'm going to have to sit here and think.
So many.
Yeah, the problem, I've now recorded something like 72 characters for Heroes or something like that. That might not be wrong. I don't actually know the number. That was just a rough guess. But it's a lot. So I'm trying to think. I will be honest. I think there was a special glee for me getting Zul'jin back in the game.
Okay.
I love Warcraft 2. It was the thing that like made me connect to Blizzard in the way that got me here. I mean, I have memories of being in the hospital with my mom, just like drawing the Footman helmet over and over, you know, that kind of thing. So like Warcraft 2 is a special place in my heart, and like just being able to get all the like, you know, just the like, do you want axe and make way for the bad guy, you know, all those like things, reinterpreting them and then getting them 2018 updated essentially, so they fit in this modern world. There was like a really cool connection to that, and like it felt awesome to like sit there and go, how can I bring this classic back in the best way I can? So yeah, I'd say he has a special connection for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Do either of you guys want to jump in on that question? A favorite line throughout Blizzard history?
You're gonna not know the answer. It's cool.
I mean, my favorite lines kind of shift depending on what we're working on. There's always something new that comes out that kind of grabs me, and that's my favorite thing now. But you know, it is a lot of the unexpected things for me, like, you know, characters that, like, maybe it's a raid boss and you kind of write like this kit of lines. You need aggro lines and ability lines and death lines, but there'll just be something in there. There's some little spark that actor brought to that character. There's in our Nighthold raid from Legion, there's like this kind of robot caretaker who goes crazy, and like it's with this proper English accent, and these lines are just ridiculous, and he's cleaning up messes from the floor, and it's killing you and all this stuff, like things like that, where I'm just like, oh man, this is so crazy and awesome. I just love that, and the freedom that we have to have so many, you know, moments that are big and epic and story focused, and these, you know, characters from 20 years ago, Illyria and Turalian coming back after all these years of being away, having those moments between them is awesome, but then doing the silly thing where it's some contraption that goes haywire and it just delivers these, like, that's the magic of WoW for me, is that it has all those elements to it, and you can enjoy them all in one game.
Yes. Actually, I thought I couldn't think of something, but I absolutely do have my favorite moment, favorite line.
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You just need someone to talk.
Across all games, across all characters. It's when Garrosh Hellscream gets killed. Have you seen that piece?
Spoiler alert, by the way.
No, please. If you can reenact it, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, these two can, I know. It's when Thrall kills Garrosh, and Thrall is very much a father figure to Garrosh. It's a whole, I'm not even going to lore dump on you right now. But essentially, we you know, again, going from, we've talked about today, we spent a lot of time talking with our actor, Patrick. Yeah. You know, on script, it could have just been, okay, it's 2 orcs fighting, 1 dies. Who gives a shit, right? I mean, blah. But it really was on paper, that's kind of what it could have just been treated as. But for us, we spent a lot of time talking about father-son issues and abandonment, and even talking about it now, I'm getting chills. And really, a father having to deal with a son who's gone to the dark side, and it got really heavy really quickly. And God, even talking about it now, Garrosh, who's and WoW is like a homicidal maniac. Okay, he gets really, really destructive in a way we've not seen in WoW before. And Thrall and Garrosh are fighting, and because of all the pre-work we did and talking about the layers, Garrosh screams out. He's in full raging orc mode. "You did this to me. You left me." And when our actor said, "You left me," his voice cracked. And for that 1 second, you heard a little boy heartbroken that his father did not take care of him. And listen to it. After this, listen to it. Okay. You just play that. It's the most subtle thing, but you just hear anguish. And here's Garrosh Hellscream, the most horrible, you know, one of the most dangerous characters in our game, being so vulnerable. And that moment affected all of us, myself and Taryn, who was doing that piece with me. When we left that day, we were all crying. Like, I remember I went home that night. I didn't talk to anybody. I was in this. It's dark. Yep. It's really, we all had to go there.
Happens.
And then the true thing for me, which is why that's my favorite line still to this day, is all the message boards were on fire when this piece came out.
Really?
They said, "I never thought I could feel sorry for Garrosh Hellscream. I love him. I feel so. I never thought I could care the way I did." Because of the work we did and what Patrick did and that voice crack. No, it wasn't about World of Warcraft. It wasn't 2 orcs. It was about father issues that most of us have, you know, and it suddenly became more honest and true and real. I love my father.
He's great, by the way.
Yeah. I know, but you know what I mean? But again, talking about truth that hits that chord, and that's what we're chasing in the game.
Yeah.
It was just 2 orcs fighting. Okay, big deal. But suddenly we all know what it is to hurt. We all know what it is to be disappointed. And it just rang true in such a vibrant way. My favorite line I've ever recorded.
That's fantastic.
Hey. You guys have to watch it too. Do you know that?
Oh, yes.
I know the two.
I know very well.
Well, hey guys, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for Skyping into the Game Informer show.
Question for you: what's your favorite character? Tell us your favorite thing in the Blizzard world. Don't think you're gonna get out of here.
I was stressing out about it. I'm more in the RTS front, and I was thinking about it like StarCraft. It might just be as simple as jacked up and good to go. In terms of just a dumb line that
high art we're talking about, and that's your choice.
I just feel like it really gets to the emotional core, Andre. Like, you don't know how jacked up he is, how good to go this man is, what he was like as a boy.
I'll buy that. I'll buy that.
Fine.
Or
as long as you've got that headcanon going and you've built it out, that's what's important. That's
or you think of like
you be you.
Yeah, the classic "I'm a medieval man," like the whole remix. Like, there's so many like good iconic stuff going back to Warcraft 2 even, where it's unforgettable. So hey guys, keep up the good work over there.
Thank you.
We'll try.
Yeah. Oh, plug our GDC talk. We're supposed to say it's on Wednesday at 3:30 at GDC.
So if you're going to GDC, definitely swing by. Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version and listen to new episodes airing every Thursday. We cover big games on the horizon, games that we've just reviewed. We have long-form developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So check it out every Thursday.